Chapter 11, The Council of the Gods. Smoke rose over Eridu like dark veils of grief. The rebellion's echo still lingered in the empty forges. Gold lay unmined, furnaces cold, and tempers hotter than flame. The air itself felt heavy, charged with celestial wrath. Alalu sat upon his throne, his face carved in despair. He had watched his people, divine though they were, revolt. He had seen the city he founded stand against him. And now, the fate of all rested upon fragile diplomacy. Word was sent across the heavens to Nibiru. Order has broken, labor has ceased, rebellion burns the earth. The Council of the Gods, led by Anu himself, responded. A great assembly was to be held in Eridu's hall. From every corner of the colony, leaders gathered in silence. Enki arrived, calm yet shadowed by disappointment and weariness. Enlil followed, his expression stormy and filled with judgment. Between them walked the gravity of opposing visions. The great hall was lit with crystal fires. Symbols of Nibiru adorned every wall and pillar. The air shimmered faintly with energy from sacred devices. And within this chamber, the destiny of two worlds awaited. Anu's image flickered within a sphere of radiant light. The transmission from Nibiru filled the hall with reverence. His voice carried the weight of creation and command. Speak, my sons. Tell me why the heavens tremble. Enlil was first to rise and bow deeply. Father, disorder rules where there should be law. The workers defy command and mock divine authority. This rebellion is treason, deserving swift celestial justice. He spoke of punishment, of order restored through fear. His words cracked like thunder through the chamber's air. Yet Enki stepped forward, his tone a flowing countercurrent. Father, they are weary. The burden is vast and cruel. He told of endless labor, of exhaustion beyond pride. They are not defiant. They are broken, desperate for mercy. We cannot build salvation upon the ashes of our kin. His plea was soft, but struck deeper than Enlil's storm. The council murmured, divided between fury and compassion. Some demanded blood, others whispered of reconciliation. Even Alalu remained silent, his crown feeling hollow. The fate of Eridu teetered between judgment and forgiveness. Then Anu's voice filled the hall once more. You are both right, my sons, yet both are blind. Law without mercy breeds ruin. Mercy without order breeds chaos. There must be balance, or all shall crumble. He decreed a compromise born of divine necessity. The laborers would be granted rest and renewal. The ruling houses would share power to maintain peace. A new structure of governance would bind the colony. And thus, the Council of the Gods was formed. Enki was given dominion over Earth's waters and life. Enlil was granted command of law and air. Alalu was to remain as king, but with council's restraint. The rebellion ended not with fire, but with fragile peace. Yet within the calm, quiet resentments smoldered still. For no decree could silence ambition or erase pride. And the heavens themselves watched, knowing this was but the beginning. At chapter 12, the blood of kings, Enki stood before the glowing creation chamber alone. Ninhursag entered softly bearing seeds and prayers tonight. Glass pods reflected faces like distant trembling stars. Enki whispered formulas older than memories edge softly. He mixed earth dust with Anunnaki blood gently. Ninhursag chanted hands shaping breath into flesh now. Energy hummed circuits, pulsed with ancient light softly. The pod glowed, then shivered like dawn quietly. A chest rose under translucent, God-woven skin slowly. Eyes opened unfocused, and learning to see slowly. The first Adamu, breathed uncertain, grateful, alive now. Enki wept not from weakness, but wonder then. Ninhursag smiled her fingers, tracing future lines gently. They named him Adamu, child of earth new. Words slipped like river water through Eridu quickly. Guards whispered in hall's curiosity, turning to fear. Rumors reached Enlil before the pale dawned swiftly. His face tightened like thunder clouds, gathering now. He summoned Enki into the council chamber immediately. Enki bowed silence, heavy as lunar stones softly. Enlil's voice cut like a falling blade coldly. You have done what gods promised, never again. Enki answered with calm unshaken, like stone softly. We needed workers to save Nibiru's breath now. Enlil's eyes narrowed like stern storm shutters now. You made life without Anu's decree, brother, today. Enki shook his head, earth in his hands. I could not watch them die silent anymore. We will teach them language, music, and craft. They will carry tools, relieve our people's labor. Enlil slammed his fist upon carved table hard. This is hubris cloaked in compassion's lie, brother. Alalu watched crown tarnished by doubt quietly now. He feared the schism between heaven and earth. Enki placed his hand on Adamu's brow softly. Return him to Ninhursag for nurture and solace. Ninhursag cradled infants' songs, rising like smoke softly. She healed rifts between cells and spirits patiently. But news spread outward like wildfire across camps. Villages murmured of new children, born of gods. Fear and wonder entangled in every marketplace. Enlil convened a tribunal beneath the hall immediately. Accusations flew like birds of sharp talons high. Enki defended his actions with quiet force firmly. Anu's image held judgment, yet did not shout. You seek to make servants into children now. Enki replied, we need kin, not mere laborers. The tribunal faltered between wrath and mercy silent. Finally, Anu's voice wavered across the void sternly. Balance must rule between law and heart always. He commanded protections for Adamu and kin now. They would labor, but also be taught wisely. A covenant was inked across the great hall. The thrones lowered some powers to grant rights today. Enki sighed and cradled Adamu inside robes gently. Ninhursag promised to teach birth and tending softly. Yet shadows lingered, jealousies woven into gold still. Enlil left voice like distant crackling thunder cold. He vowed to guard law with iron hand. And Adamu slept destiny sleeping within his chest. Chapter 13, The Forbidden Garden. Morning light spilled across Eden's first garden slowly. Mist curled like silver serpents between tall reeds, gently. Adamu awoke to soft rain kissing his brow. He heard Ninhursag's voice weaving songs through air. Rise, child of clay, walk the breath of dawn. Around him shimmered a world untouched by death. Leaves whispered languages older than stars above. Waters hummed secrets drawn from deep molten heart. Enki watched from afar, hidden among shining trees. His eyes carried both pride and regret mixed. The garden bloomed with order and divine geometry. Rivers formed perfect curves that mirrored constellations above. Each fruit glowed with coded light of creation. Adamu walked barefoot, feeling pulse of earth beneath. Every root spoke to his blood, quietly alive. Ninhursag appeared beside him, radiant in calm. Her robes glowed with woven glyphs of balance. You must tend the garden, child of gods. He nodded, though he barely understood her words. Above them, 2 moons drifted in silent grace. The first carried Enki's seal of wisdom bright. The second glowed cold, with Enlil's stern gaze. Enki descended, cloaked in silver air that shimmered. He walked the garden paths, slow and deliberate. Behind him followed Ninti, goddess of life breath. Her hands carried vessels of golden dew softly. This is paradise, whispered Enki with longing eyes. But paradise without choice is only a prison. Ninti frowned, for she felt destiny stirring beneath. He led her to a tall, shining tree, silently. Its leaves reflected both shadow and flame together. This, he said, is the fruit of knowing, the fruit of destiny, chaos, and creation combined. Ninti hesitated, the air trembling with foreboding hum. Enlil forbade this knowledge, she whispered, afraid, quietly. Enki smiled a sad smile beneath soft rain. Enlil fears freedom, not truth, dear sister divine. He fears that humans may see beyond command. He reached toward the fruit, fingers trembling slightly. The branch bent, offering its prize willingly to him. A scent of storm filled the air around them. The skies above darkened, as if gods watched silently. He whispered ancient words under his breath carefully. To awaken one is to awaken the cosmos. He handed the fruit to Ninti with reverence deep. Give this to Adamu when time ripens fully. Let him see both light and shadow together. Ninti held it close, heart heavy with wonder. Her eyes glowed faintly with forbidden purpose now. They left the garden as winds began to stir. Later, Adamu sat by the great river alone. He watched fish leap like silver sparks of life. He wondered about the gods' distant voices often. Ninhursag taught him the names of stars above. But sometimes he heard whispers from the trees softly, They spoke of choice, danger, and hidden fire. That night, the air shimmered with unseen presence. Ninti approached, face veiled, steps light as breath. As she placed the fruit before him, silently glowing, Adamu hesitated, heart trembling like a storm's edge. He saw his reflection within the golden skin, and within that reflection, an entire world waiting. He reached out and touched it with wonder. The ground pulsed beneath him, rivers sang louder, skies cracked open with radiant lightning and sound. The first taste burned and illuminated his soul. Knowledge poured through him like molten gold, roaring. He saw stars birthing and dying in rhythm. He saw Nibiru's red glow circling dark paths. He saw Enki's sorrow and Enlil's cold resolve. He saw his own blood intertwine with divine thread. And then silence, vast and infinite, swallowed all. When he awoke, the world no longer shimmered. Colors dulled, winds grew sharp with purpose. Ninti stood trembling, realizing what had begun. Enki watched from afar, beneath darkening skies. Enlil descended in thunder and fury divine. His voice shook mountains and shattered still air. You have defied the decree of the gods, and now you must bear the weight of choice. Adamu wept not from shame, but awakening. For in his heart now dwelled the universe itself. The gods turned away their gaze in sorrow. The garden dimmed, rivers slowed, birds grew silent. The first exile began not in chains, but knowing. Enki bowed to the wind, whispering his vow. From this fall shall rise a race eternal. Let them carry both pain and possibility forever. And so the dawn closed upon paradise lost. Chapter 14, The Exile of Light. Storms gathered as the garden's gates began to fade. Lightning crawled like serpents across bruised purple skies. Adamu and Ninti stood trembling beneath the thunder, their breath misted, carrying sorrow through heavy air. Behind them, paradise wilted, its light withdrawing slowly. Before them stretched a wasteland of ash and wind. Enlil's voice echoed like a blade through clouds. You sought freedom, and freedom you shall bear. His command cracked the heavens like shattering glass. A cherubim descended, wings blazing with radiant fury. Flaming orbs circled the tree of knowing eternally. The ground split open, rivers ray-rooted, stars dimmed. Adamu reached for Ninti's hand, trembling but steady. Her fingers interlocked with his, warmth amid ruin. Together, they stepped beyond the garden's dying glow. Wind lashed against their faces, tasting of dust. Above them, Nibiru's red eye blinked through storm. Enki watched from the distance, cloaked in grief. He whispered words of comfort the storm carried. Walk the earth, children, and claim your becoming. You are no longer God's design, but your own. His tears fell like meteors across the night sky. Each drop seeded a hidden spark in the soil. Forests would one day grow from those tears, silently. Adamu stumbled as his feet struck sharp stone. Blood trickled and met the earth in communion. The soil drank greedily, humming with new life. Ninti pressed her hand to his wound, gently. Pain is the language of being, she murmured softly. They walked for days beneath a sky of shifting flame. Hunger gnawed, thirst burned, sleep brought haunting dreams. They saw towers crumble in visions of what's to come. Cities of men, temples rising, gods watching unseen. In dreams, Enki appeared with gentle voice again. My children, the light is not lost, only hidden. Seek the rivers that flow beneath the mountain. There the memory of Eden still breathes in shadow. They awoke beside the mouth of a cavern wide. Within glowed veins of crystal pulsing, faintly golden. Adamu touched the walls, feeling warmth like breath. Ninti knelt and sang an old hymn of creation. Her voice echoed, summoning fire from sleeping stone. The cave came alive with flickering amber glow. There they built their first shelter, fragile yet sacred. Ninti gathered roots, berries, and flowing water gently. Adamu carved symbols in rock with sharpened bone. Each mark a memory of lost paradise now. The first words of man were not spoken aloud. They were carved in stone and sealed in silence. At night, they watched Nibiru's path across the void. It glowed faint red, orbiting destiny and remembrance. Ninti whispered, "Will they forgive us, the high ones?" Adamu looked upward, eyes filled with fierce wonder. They made us, yet they fear what we've become. Beyond the stars, Enlil sat in council coldly. He spoke of containment, of keeping mankind small. But Enki argued that growth was inevitable now. You cannot silence what carries our breath, brother. Their minds burn with the same fire as ours. Enlil's gaze turned to Nibiru's fading, horizon stern. And the fire that creates also destroys. Remember this. Anu watched from his throne, expression carved in stone. He spoke slowly, his voice older than creation itself. Let them walk, let them build, let them dream. For from their struggle we will learn again. Below, Adamu planted seeds from Eden's garden carefully. Tiny sprouts pushed through black soil like whispered defiance. Each leaf shimmered faintly, remembering lost light within. Ninti smiled through tears, seeing hope reborn slowly. They built a fire that night under open stars. Smoke rose, curling toward the heavens like prayer. In that smoke, Enki's face flickered and vanished. He watched as mankind's exile became its genesis. The winds calmed, the earth sighed beneath new promise, and in the silence that followed, life began again. Not divine, not perfect, but beautifully, irrevocably human. And Chapter 15, The Rise of the First Cities. The years moved like rivers beneath the sun's gaze. Mountains shifted, and the world found its rhythm again. Adamu's blood carried the seed of remembrance deep. His children spread across valleys and plains unending. Each dawn, fires burned brighter, voices rose louder. The earth, once silent, now throbbed with human will. From caves to clay huts, from whispers to songs, human hands shaped stones, walls, and dreams together. Ninti watched them from the hills, heart divided gently. Pride and sorrow tangled in her breath like vines. She whispered prayers to the soil that bore them. Each prayer became a root, a memory, a tree. The forests thickened, rivers cut paths through destiny. Generations passed like wind through tall reeds softly. They learned the dance of seasons, the hunt, the harvest. The stars above became their map and their myth. They built altars to the unseen watchers of night. Smoke curled toward Nibiru's red spark in the void. Enki returned often, veiled in mist and light. He walked among them as a stranger and teacher. He taught them irrigation, numbers, and the stars' paths. He showed them how to mold clay into bricks, and how to read the river's pulse for wisdom. Men gathered under his words, calling him Lord E. He smiled, knowing their reverence came from love. Not fear, not command, but awe and connection. Where Enki walked, cities began to rise slowly. The first was Eridu, born beside a great sea. Walls of mud brick shimmered under the newborn sun. Canals glistened like silver threads through fertile soil. Within its heart stood a ziggurat of 7 steps, each step carved with symbols of heaven and earth. Smoke rose from altars fragrant with cedar and myrrh. Songs filled the air, praises to the Lord of Waters. Women wove cloth dyed with river reeds and ochre. Children laughed beneath tall banners of woven gold. Eridu pulsed like a living heart upon the plain. Ninti walked among them unseen, touching infants gently. As she whispered blessings into their dreams, each night softly. But far beyond the hills, Enlil watched in silence. He saw smoke rising and order taking form below. He saw humans building like gods once did before. Enki seeds rebellion beneath the guise of wisdom, he said. Already they build towers to reach the heavens. From Nibiru, Anu's counsel shimmered through the ether. Their rise is inevitable. Guide them. Do not destroy. But Enlil's heart burned with fear, cloaked in duty. He sent storms to test their strength and endurance. Winds tore roofs, rains flooded fields, rivers overflowed. Yet humanity endured, rebuilding stronger each time again. Their spirit hardened like tempered bronze in flame. In Eridu's temple, Enki stood beneath starlit domes. He raised his hands and spoke to the gathering. The gods will not save you forever, my kin. You must master what they fear to give. Fire, water, sky, they are yours to command. The crowd roared with a faith born of struggle. In that moment, Enki felt the weight of creation. He saw Ninti's face in memory, smiling faintly. He saw Enlil's shadow gathering beyond the horizon. But he did not waver. He continued to teach. He spoke of ships, of tools, of measures and stars. He carved the first laws upon stone tablets carefully. Honor balance, for power without wisdom devours itself. Thus the first city became a cradle of knowing. And from Eridu, others rose, Uruk, and Kish, each built by descendants who dreamed beyond the horizon. They sang songs to the gods who once walked among them, and to the God who still lingered, watching in silence. At night, Ninti and Enki met beside the rivers. Their voices mingled with the sound of flowing time, and they are becoming what we once were, she whispered softly. Enki nodded, eyes heavy with joy and sorrow. They are the reflection we feared and the hope we needed. Above them, Nibiru glowed faintly in the void eternal. And beneath that glow, the age of man began to rise. Chapter 16, The Wrath of Enlil. The winds changed, carrying whispers of rebellion and flame. Smoke coiled above the plains, dark against the dawn. Eridu's towers gleamed, their peaks kissed by sunlight. Songs of men echoed through the valley's bones. But high above, in the courts of the divine, Enlil watched, with fury tightening his immortal chest. He saw mortals building temples tall as clouds. He heard prayers no longer trembling with fear. He felt power shifting from heaven to earth slowly. In that shift, he saw the end of order. The age of gods bending mankind had begun to fade. His eyes burned like molten bronze in twilight's glare. Brother, he spoke into the vast ether coldly. Your mercy breeds arrogance. Your wisdom breeds disobedience. Across the void, Enki's voice drifted calm and deep. They are learning what we once forgot, brother. To build without conquest, to love without chains. But Enlil's heart had hardened like stone under storms. Love, he spat, thunder curling around his words. They defy the decrees of Anu himself now. They speak our names as equals, not masters. He rose, robe billowing like dark wings of fate, summoning winds from the edges of Nibiru's veil. He tore through dimensions, descending to the mortal realm. His arrival split the sky like a wound of fire. Mountains bowed, rivers turned to mist and fear. In Eridu, the priests saw stars fall in terror. They fell to their knees, trembling before the storm's roar. Enki appeared, stepping from shadow into lightning's glow. Do not bring ruin upon what we began. But Enlil's voice was already fury given form. These mortals forget their place beneath our thrones. They build cities where shrines should stand alone. They carve our likeness without prayer or reverence. His hand lifted, and clouds twisted into weapons. Rain sharpened into shards of glass and pain. The earth groaned, torn between gods and their grief. Enki stepped forward, hands raised in calm defiance. Brother, you cannot unmake them without unmaking yourself. For they carry our breath, our blood, our spark. Enlil struck the ground, shattering stone and faith alike. Temples fell, towers crumbled into dust and echo. Men screamed, women clutched their children and prayed. But no answer came, only the roar of divine wrath. Then a sound broke through, a cry not of fear. Adapa, a son of Adamu, rose amid the ruins. His voice carried through the storm like a blade. We will rebuild, even if the sky falls, because we are the earth and the breath within. For a moment, silence held the world suspended. Enlil stared at the mortal, thunder dying on his lips. In that frail defiance, he saw his own reflection. The spark of eternity, unbound and alive, defying death. He lowered his hand, trembling with unfamiliar sorrow. These creatures dare to mirror us, he whispered softly. Enki stepped beside him, voice low as rain. It's not mirror, brother, continue. They are our becoming. Enlil turned away, cloak sweeping like shadow across heaven. His fury cooled into warning, not forgiveness. I will watch, he said, voice hollow as wind. And when they forget balance, I will return. Lightning flared once more, then vanished into dusk. The skies cleared, revealing stars like open wounds. Eridu smoldered, but its heart still pulsed with fire. Adapa stood amid ruin, hands covered in ash. He looked upward, seeing not gods but possibilities. Around him, survivors gathered, silent and determined. They began stacking stones, brick by brick once more. Each wall a prayer, each hammer strike a promise. Enki watched, smiling through sorrow from a ridge afar. They will rise higher than we ever dared, he said. Ninti appeared beside him, her voice soft as twilight. And fall harder than even we could bear. Such is the path of creation, Enki murmured. Not divine, not perfect, but endlessly becoming. Above, Nibiru glowed faintly, a red wound in space. And below, the children of gods began again. Chapter 17, the covenant of blood and stone. The moon rose heavy above the ruins of Eridu. Ash drifted like snow upon the bones of walls. Fires flickered where once temples crowned the horizon. Adipa walked among the remnants of a broken world. Each step echoed the silence left by gods withdrawn. The air still carried the scent of thunder's wrath. Yet beneath the ruin, life stirred, stubborn and glowing. Children slept under cracked domes of fallen towers. Women whispered lullabies to the unborn in darkness. Men carved tools from shattered idols and forgotten dreams. They rebuilt not in worship, but in remembrance now. Enki watched from the edge of the river's shimmer. His reflection rippled beside Adapa's weary form. "You have endured the wrath of heaven," he said, "and now you must bind your future to the earth." Adapa bowed, voice hoarse from days of labor. How do we bind the unseen to the soil? Enki reached down, fingers drawing circles in wet clay. In this, the gods found their beginning once too. He pressed his palm into the circle, leaving mark. A stone remembers, and blood speaks beyond death's reach. Adapa hesitated, eyes flickering with both awe and fear. "Our blood is sacred," he whispered, "the breath of being." Enki nodded, eyes gleaming like stars submerged in sorrow. And yet, to create is to surrender a part. He handed Adapa a blade, forged from fallen metal. "Mix your blood with clay, your breath with word." Adapa obeyed, trembling as he cut his palm deeply. Blood flowed, crimson against the dust of gods. He pressed his hand into the clay, sealing destiny. The ground trembled, as if waking from a dream. The markings glowed faintly, forming spirals of light. Enki spoke softly, voice carrying through the dark wind. "From this act, man and earth are forever bound. From your veins shall rise the builders of tomorrow. Their hearts will echo with both power and burden." Lightning flashed in the distance, illuminating the covenant. Ninti appeared then, face veiled in starlit sorrow. "Do you see what this binding will bring, Enki?" Blood carries not only life, but memory and war. Enki turned to her, his voice quiet but resolute. "They must learn balance, or perish seeking it. She knelt beside Adapa, hands tracing his bleeding palm. Her touch sealed the wound, leaving a faint sigil. In this mark, she whispered, lies both gift and curse. For every city built, another shall fall in shadow. Adapa looked to the heavens, where storms had cleared. He saw stars burning with the cold of watching gods. Then let us build knowing the cost, he said. Enki smiled, a weary, eternal smile of the Maker. So be it, child of clay and courage alike. He struck his staff upon the ground 3 times. The earth cracked, revealing veins of luminous stone. Within those veins flowed rivers of molten light. Adapa watched as they hardened into tablets of power. Symbols formed, glyphs that pulsed with creation's rhythm. These are the stones of knowing, Enki declared. They will teach, warn, and remember when we fade. Adapa knelt, tracing the lines with reverent fingers. Each glyph hummed with a voice beyond his own. Ninti stepped back, eyes shimmering with both pride and dread. Will they use them for wisdom or dominion, Enki? He looked beyond her, toward the horizon of time. Neither at first, he said. They will seek survival. But knowledge has a hunger deeper than flesh. Winds rose, carrying the scent of sea and smoke. Adapa gathered the stones into a circle of offering. The people gathered, their torches reflecting in the light. Enki raised his hands, his voice thunder and whisper. Behold the covenant of blood and stone eternal. Your strength lies not in gods, but in each other. And when you forget, the stones shall remember. The crowd knelt, their shadows merging in flickering fire. Above them, the stars shifted into a new pattern. Enlil's gaze flickered across the heavens, cold and unblinking. He saw the covenant and understood its weight. Brother, you have bound them beyond our reach, he murmured. Enki's voice answered through the ether like a sigh. They were never ours to hold, only to guide. Silence fell between heaven and earth once more. In that silence, humanity began to dream. And from those dreams, the first empires took shape. Stone upon stone, oath upon oath, blood upon memory. The covenant endured, fragile, beautiful, and forever alive. At chapter 18, the first river of gold. The Anunnaki worked in the sweltering plains. They built canals to channel the muddy waters. They dug deep into the earth's rich belly. Sweat mingled with dust upon their bronze skin. The sun of Kai beat down like molten fire, and the rivers whispered songs of the deep. Anu's promise of gold drove them endlessly forward. Every sunrise brought hope wrapped in exhaustion. Every sunset carried the sound of hammers falling. The mines near the Euphrates glimmered faintly with promise. But the yield was too little, too slow, and murmurs began to rise among the ranks. Enlil counted the wagons, one by one. His eyes burned with the weight of delay. The rivers mock us, he muttered bitterly. This soil gives less than the mountains promised. Enki, always patient, studied the river bends. He traced ancient lines in the sand. Perhaps the treasure lies where life begins, he said, where the water births the green. The Anunnaki followed him to the delta mouth. There, the rivers kissed the sea's vast edge. The ground shimmered with golden dust and salt. Enki knelt and scooped a handful of sand. Tiny specks sparkled like stars under the sun. He smiled, slow and knowing. And the gods reward those who look deeper, he whispered. They began constructing the first sluice channels. Water roared through the carved trenches of clay. Sand sifted, gold gleamed, shouts filled the air. Enlil stood atop a stone ridge, watching. He felt the old pride return to his chest. This is the river that feeds destiny, he said. And the first vein of gold for Nibiru. At dusk, the workers sang songs of return, songs of rivers that carried dreams to the sky. The stars seemed closer that night, burning softly. Enki sat by the water, writing in tablets. He recorded the shapes of rivers and winds. And beside him, Ninmah watched in silence. Will it be enough? She finally asked. Enki looked up, his eyes shadowed with thought. For now, it must be, he said quietly. But the earth keeps her secrets in layers, as she gives only to those who listen. That night, Enlil prayed to the skies. Father Anu, we have begun your will, and let the rivers of Kai yield their gold. Let the fires of our forges never fade. But high above, Nibiru remained silent, unseen. Its orbit stretched wide, beyond mortal patience. The first gold shipment left within 3 moons, loaded upon ships of shining cedar wood. Each vessel glimmered under the twilight horizon. The Anunnaki watched them sail toward the stars, their hearts heavy with longing and triumph alike. Enki's words echoed softly among them all. The rivers remember everything that flows through them. But beneath their joy, unrest began to stir. Whispers of toil without reward spread quietly. Some said the gods of Kai were displeased. Others believed Enlil's pride cursed their harvest. And deep underground, miners began vanishing mysteriously. Shadows crept through tunnels, cold and breathless. One worker claimed to see light beneath stone, a pulse of gold that moved like a heart. When he returned to tell the overseer, he vanished. Only his pickaxe was found, embedded in rock. Enki frowned when he heard the report. Kai is alive, he murmured, and she remembers. The next morning, the river ran red with silt. Enlil called it a warning from the depths. Do not anger what feeds us, Enki said calmly. But Enlil's eyes burned with defiance. We did not come to kneel, he replied. We came to rule. And so the first river of gold flowed. But with it came the first whisper of rebellion, a fracture between brother and brother, God and God. The earth had given them her wells, but she would soon demand her price. The night winds carried a low, rumbling song. The mines groaned like something vast awakening. And from the dark horizon, lightning split the sky. The Anunnaki looked upward, fear in their eyes, for they knew Nibiru's gaze had turned again, and judgment was coming with the next tide. Chapter 19, The Fire Beneath the Mines. The earth trembled beneath their restless hands. Tunnels wound deep like serpents under Kai's skin. Each swing of a pick rang hollow and strange. The air grew thick, hot, alive with whispers. The walls began to pulse faintly with light. And somewhere below, something stirred awake. Enlil descended into the mines himself that dawn. His eyes gleamed with divine impatience and suspicion. Dig deeper, he commanded. The gold veins run low. The foremen hesitated, their torches flickering uneasily. The ground seemed to breathe beneath their feet. A sound like a sigh came from the rock. Enki stood at the mine's edge, watching closely. He traced symbols on a clay tablet slowly. The stone hums, he said. It remembers creation. This is not lifeless dust we pierce. But Enlil brushed him aside, his voice sharp. We were born to command, not to fear. The miners obeyed, though terror gnawed their hearts. Each new strike echoed like thunder in the void. Dust fell from the ceilings in slow cascades. The torches wavered as the tunnels grew hot. And then, from deep below, came a low roar. A surge of light rippled through the rock. A fire burst from the fissures in twisting streams. It moved like a serpent, alive and furious. The workers screamed and fled toward the surface. Flames licked at the walls, breathing in rhythm. Enlil's armor glowed, red under the molten glare. He raised his arm, shouting over the chaos. The fire bends to will, not to fear. But the fire did not obey. It coiled upward, shaped like a great beast. Eyes formed in the blaze, ancient and knowing. A voice rolled through the cavern, low and deep. You take from Kai what she has not offered. Return her blood or burn in her breath. The flames collapsed suddenly into darkness. Smoke filled the mines like mourning veils. Silence fell, thick and heavy as stone. The survivors emerged into the crimson twilight above. Their faces were streaked with soot and disbelief. Enlil stared at his burned hands, trembling slightly. That night, the council gathered in the temple. The air smelled of ash and salt. Ninmah spoke first, her tone steady and cold. Kai resists you, Enlil. The signs are clear. She bleeds when you command her to serve. She burns when you force her to yield. Enki nodded slowly, his eyes like deep water. The fire beneath is not mere heat, he said. It is memory, the pulse of creation itself. And Nibiru's heart was once the same flame. Now we awaken it again, uninvited. Enlil's voice thundered through the chamber. Then what would you have us do, brother? Return empty-handed to Anu's judgment seat. Our people starve while you speak of mercy. Enki met his gaze, calm yet sorrowful. Better to beg than to burn, he replied. Outside, the winds carried a strange new scent. The soil steamed, and the rivers hissed softly. The fire beneath had not gone silent. It whispered through the earth like a heartbeat. And from the horizon, a storm began to form. Lightning split the skies over the mining valley. The Anunnaki looked up, dread in their eyes. Ninurta clutched his weapon, eyes sharp and waiting. "Something rises with the storm," he murmured. Enki closed his tablet with a heavy sigh. "The fire has found a voice," he said quietly. "And soon it will speak in tongues of ruin." That night, the first tremor shook their temples. Walls cracked, dust fell, and idols swayed. The mines glowed faintly, even without flame. The fire beneath had grown restless again. Its light pulsed to a rhythm older than gods, older than stars, older than even Nibiru. Enki stood at the edge of the crater. Wind tore at his robes, wild and fierce. He whispered words no mortal had ever heard. And for a moment, the trembling ceased. But far below, the fire only laughed. A deep, patient laughter that never truly ended. For the gods had taken what was never theirs. And Kai, the living earth, had begun to wake. Her fury would not be quenched with gold, nor her silence bought by prayers or promises. The fire beneath the mines was her warning. And soon, all of Kai would hear her cry. At Chapter 20, The Birth of the Watchers. The night sky shimmered with cold, distant stars. Enki stood alone atop a ridge, watching the plains. Below him, the mines smoldered, glowing faint and ominous. He felt the pulse of Kai beneath his feet. Her heartbeat was slow, yet vast, like molten stone. Something stirred within the soil, alive and patient. We cannot control what we did not create, Enki whispered. His words vanished into the wind, carried to nowhere. Ninma appeared beside him, her presence steady and luminous. The humans will need guidance, she said softly. They are children, yet their minds stretch toward the stars. Enki nodded, heavy with the weight of inevitability. He summoned the first of the Watchers in secret. Shining forms of bronze and crystal emerged from shadows. Each stood tall, eyes bright with reflected starlight. They were neither mortal nor fully divine. Their purpose: to teach, to observe, to protect the line. Yet in them lived fragments of Enki's own spark. Go, he commanded, voice firm but gentle. Walk among them, teach the ways of the earth. Show them water, stone, fire, but never your full power. And remember, knowledge carries weight beyond your own. The watchers bent to the soil, touching its surface. They learned the whisper of roots, the hum of rivers. They heard the stories of stone, etched by time. Each one drank deep from the memory of Kai. Enki watched silently, knowing the gift was also a burden. Ninma spoke again, eyes flickering with unease. They will marvel, but they may also fear you. And when they fear, their hearts harden like iron. Enki sighed, lifting his gaze to the horizon. The seed of humanity must grow under shadow and sun. The first watcher descended to the valley of men. Adapa watched from the ridge, eyes wide with awe. The being knelt, hand extended in greeting and promise. Its voice was soft, carrying the cadence of the stars. I am here to guide, not to command, it said. Learn from me, but choose your own path always. Men gathered slowly, whispers spreading like river mist. They watched the luminous form, fear and curiosity entwined. Children stepped forward, drawn by light and wonder. The watcher smiled, a motion of pure energy and intent. Hands lifted, shaping water, fire, and clay into forms, teaching them the rhythm of earth, the cycle of life. Enlil watched from the heavens, eyes narrowing like storms. They meddle with what should remain mortal, he growled. His voice thundered across the sky, yet no lightning fell. They seek to empower humanity beyond my command. Anu remained silent, weighing the balance in his throne. Knowledge cannot be unlearned, he murmured through the void. The watchers multiplied, walking distant valleys and rivers. They taught names of stars, the flow of water. They carved the first symbols into clay and stone. Each lesson bore the imprint of heaven and earth. And slowly, humans began to see beyond themselves. At night, the watchers gathered under the moon's glow. They shared what they had learned with each other quietly. The humans are growing, one murmured, voice soft and strange. And yet their hearts remain fragile, wild with fear. Enki observed, the weight of eternity heavy on him. They will face choice, pain, and wonder alike, he said. And from that, they will become something more. The first covenant of watchers had begun. Guardians of knowledge, watchers of humanity's spark. Neither fully God nor mortal, yet tied to both. Their purpose was clear: to shepherd, to observe, to wait. And far below, in the mines and the rivers, Kai's pulse thrummed in time with every living heart.